It's a great privilege to, I don't know how to call it, to interview, to talk. I prefer to talk because you will be the one who will talk. I raise some questions. First, I would like to thank you as Ambassador of the United States after long and fantastic career as it's called in the United States, it's ridiculous, secretary. It's the most powerful minister in the world of finance and the director general, that's my translation, to the whole United States under the Almighty, the President of the United States, and you are now ambassador. I do have guesstimate that you are here because you think you can support peace and other things, but that's my guesstimate, maybe I'm wrong. So I would like to, first of all, to thank you for coming here, and secondly, I would like to thank the United States. A personal remark, I used to be involved in the most sensitive layers of cooperation. I do have some colleagues here with the United States of America, and I cannot imagine our national security without United States. United States, Israel, United States cooperation is major pillar in our national security. So based on some remarks that have been heard here about, some, I don't understand them, so like speeches in the Congress, like declarations about United States, Israel, United States is not supporting Israel. Everything you are giving us is for free. Each F-35 costs $80 million before tax and VAT. So, and not talking about the cooperation between U.S. that prevented dramatic attack by Iran against Israel, and the most effective word I've ever heard, don't, that was translated to the American power. So, what is your perspective about our strategic relation between U.S. from Washington or from your position as Ambassador of the United States? I'm sorry for the long question.
It's great to be with you here today, and I look forward to the conversation that we're going to be having. I think if you ask me, the best way to define the strategic relationship between the United States and Israel is to look at what's happened over the last 8 months. From the moment the October 7th attack happened, the U.S. responded the way a friend responds, providing what was needed for Israel to defend itself, being there to work in the international community at a time when it was increasingly challenging to promote the interests of Israel, and taking steps that are almost impossible to describe the magnitude of, and you've alluded to them, having aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean. Huge decision for national security reasons, huge decision in terms of cost. Responding to Iran's attack with a multi-layered defense, where the U.S. responding brought in Jordan and Saudi Arabia so that there was visibility in the whole airspace. The idea that there's any question about the U.S. support for Israel is frankly something I don't understand. And as my colleagues in Washington have said, we don't understand. We continue to support Israel and will continue to support Israel. Now, it doesn't mean we haven't asked questions through the course of the last 8 months. We have, and I think we've actually helped provide ideas that have been helpful as the war has been fought, as the response has been designed in terms of humanitarian assistance. We've done what the closest of friends do. We've shared, mostly in private, our thinking about where we stand and where things need to go. So I actually think if you look at the facts speak for themselves. Even after one shipment of large diameter bombs was held, precision-guided missiles were still delivered. Other things keep coming. I think there's a certain impatience that is understandable because the country is still at war and it feels like a time, and it is a time of crisis. But the U.S. system is moving quickly still, perhaps not at the speed of October 8th, when things were just at an extraordinary pace of response, something that isn't even physically sustainable because you start running into supply issues. So we're at a different point now in the war and the process, but we're not in a different point in terms of the U.S. support for Israel.
We are in very problematic situation or very challenging situation. What is your vision from your experience and perspective? And you are very close to the president. What is your perspective? I think we need to combine military strengths with wisdom. So what is your perspective? What are your recommendations?
We have really throughout the war been urging, and publicly, I'm not saying anything that isn't well known, urging that Israel fight the war in a way that reflects our shared values, that is something that leads to a better future. So what does that mean? It means that even though it was very hard, Israel did provide and is continuing to provide a huge amount of humanitarian assistance. I think we've been helpful in helping to make that happen in a way that is actually making strategically a difference in terms of Israel's ability to continue and to ultimately succeed. I think that in a world where those humanitarian needs weren't met, the space for continuing the war would have been smaller, not greater. I think if you look at the way we have urged Israel to take on the very serious challenge of defeating Hamas as a military and governing force, we've said it's important to limit collateral damage. And I know that the Israeli military was doing that on its own, according to its own approaches. But I think we have been helpful in terms of making clear that the boundaries of where decisions are really, really matter, and it has to be reflected in the results. Those are hard conversations, but I think that the situation now is as difficult it is, as hard as it is, it's in a place where we're able to continue to support Israel in its very, very crucial, war. And the rest of the world is, with all the criticism, not in a place that it would have been if those kinds of considerations had not been responded to. Can you imagine right now if instead of having people say that Gaza was on the verge of, people being, malnourished, or if you actually had a famine? I mean, we're not of the view that there is a famine. I know other people say there is. Can you imagine if there truly was? So the provision of humanitarian assistance has been, I think, crucial to keeping the pathway open to be successful. Ultimately, the real issue in terms of wisdom is having a vision of where it goes afterwards. And, our strategy on where it goes afterwards has been very clear. We think that when the war ends, there has to be a vision for a future where you don't end up back where you started again because there was no resolution of some of the core issues. So what does that mean? It means that Israel has to be secure. It can't be exposed to another October 7th. But there also has to be a conversation about the future of the Palestinian people, that there has to be a pathway towards a better future, a future of self-governance. If you don't take that pathway, then ultimately you're going to have more problems in the future, not less problems in the future. But really strategically, we're at a moment where in the region, Israel is on the brink of being accepted by all of the moderate Arab countries. The Abraham Accords were hugely important. What we saw on April 14th, when, as I said, the United States was providing support with a multi-layered air defense, having Jordan and Saudi Arabia participating in that is just a little bit of a hint of what the value of being accepted in the region by the moderate Arab world is. If you look at an alignment where Iran and its proxies are on one side, and Israel and the West, the United States, are on the other side with all of the moderate Arab countries, it is a much stronger place to be. Now, I think there's a pathway still to accomplish that. I think that even in this difficult moment, there's still a serious conversation with Saudi Arabia about normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. I don't think you can get there if you don't also have a pathway for dealing with the legitimate interests of the Palestinian people, not Hamas, but the Palestinian people for a better future. Now, I've heard people say, how can you do that? How can you allow the outcome of October 7th to be a victory for Hamas getting a Palestinian state? I actually don't believe that anything that I've said would be a victory for Hamas. It would be a defeat for Hamas if there were actually normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. It would be a defeat for Iran. And I think if you have a demilitarized, autonomous governing body where you're actually able to have a future that provides for security and dignity for the people of Gaza and the West Bank, that is a safer future. Now, I know that's hard now, right, at this moment. But I think to call that a victory for Hamas, it has it backwards.
Sounds very worrying, what you say. Because I would like to ask you, what will happen if we continue the war in Gaza? There is no way out in the north, and maybe there will be confrontation that is unprecedented, not unprecedented, but very, very challenging to say. And then Iran, one day, will cross the Rubicon and develop military nuclear capability while not having the alliance with Saudi Arabia and all the important things you mentioned. What is your vision based on your long experience?
I don't see how a future of endless war is going to make a better future. We haven't talked a lot about the hostages, but let's talk for a minute about the negotiation for a hostage release and a ceasefire. Why is it so critical? First and foremost, you have people who need to come home to their families. It's just a human issue that has to be resolved. But strategically, if there were a hostage deal and there were a ceasefire, it would open a doorway to a discussion with Hezbollah, Lebanon, about avoiding a war. It would open the doorway to finishing the normalization discussions with Saudi Arabia. It would open the doorway to strategic steps that could make the rather dark question not as likely to be the future. I think that the challenge right now is we can't give up on trying to end the war in Gaza in a way that leaves us positioned to win the strategic future. None of that will work if there's not a day after strategy for how to govern Gaza. It's one of the reasons that we've said for months now, it's already late. You need to be thinking through how there's going to be civil order, civil administration. We've made it clear we think the Palestinian Authority has to be part of that. Leaders here have made it clear that it's only if the Palestinian Authority is reformed. There's only one group of people who can do the work to make civil order come back. And we've got to figure out how to get those people to work in a way that meets everybody's needs. I think that's possible. It's hard, and having security conditions that permit it is probably the first and hardest, challenge you have to get over. But you have to be able to talk about it. You have to be able to work through these issues and solve these problems in a meaningful way. To look at a future, where Iran's worst instincts shape the future is not a good future. We have to look at creating a better future.
There is a very worrying declaration by General Brown that he is like number one in the hierarchy. And in the military hierarchy of the United States that he said, I think yesterday, that maybe in case of confrontation with Hezbollah, we would not be able to accept the same efficient support by US or something like that. What we need to understand from this declaration, because based on my experience, the declarations are not made by some, without considering it first, let's say.
Look, I think we've made clear that we continue to support Israel and its need to defend itself. We've also made clear we think the right course of action is try to avoid a war in the north, and that's why Amos Gilead has been going back and forth between Lebanon and Israel, and he was just here last week. We're going to continue to try to pursue diplomatic outcome, which is, I think, closer than people think in terms of most of the issues. We just are not at a point in time where there's the kind of quiet in Gaza to permit that to get to a completion. So I think that is our objective. In terms of our commitment to defending Israel, I'm sure you noticed this. Yesterday, when CENTCOM announced that one aircraft carrier was leaving, the Eisenhower is leaving, it also announced that another aircraft carrier is coming, the Teddy Roosevelt. These are not small things. Moving an aircraft carrier group is a big deal. And I can't tell you exactly what is going to be available when. That's a complicated technical set of issues. But we've made it clear that we think Israel has to be able to defend itself. Does that mean we want a war? No. Does that mean we're urging it? We're urging a diplomatic solution. That is our preferred outcome. We think it's the best outcome for Israel, the best outcome for the region, and the best outcome for the United States.
The last question is, do you have any, let's say, optimistic vision about the situation here in the Middle East based on what we have just discussed?
Well, look, I actually think the fact that when you asked me where does wisdom come in, and I described a strategic vision of how this war could end in a better place, that is optimistic. It's not without hard decisions. There are hard decisions that will have to be made, but it is an optimistic vision. I think Israel's resilience is a source of optimism. I'm new to diplomacy. I'm not new to economics. Israel's economy is coming through this war stronger than many people thought it would. That's very important. The future is going to have a lot of challenges. And I think to be really optimistic, the United States and Israel as partners can succeed in almost anything that we work together on. And I believe that. And it's why we have to make sure our countries stay close together and not allow issues to be created that create daylight.
The last question is a personal one. How do you enjoy your service based on your long career in the most important functions in U.S. government?
Well, I would be exaggerating if I said this is what I expected when I accepted this appointment in July last year. I thought I was coming into a position where the number one objective would be completing a Saudi normalization deal while I was here. I'm committed to still having that be the objective.
Mr. Ambassador, I would like to thank you as Ambassador of the United States. Personally, it used to be my privilege to be, let's say, to be part of our unique cooperation between the U.S. and Israel. I need to share with you that, again, it's our unique relationship. It's a major pillar in our national security. I cannot imagine our future, our security, without this. I call it steel dome. What the United States is giving us is so various areas of national security, of military cooperation, intelligence cooperation, international arena, and so on and so on. So, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for, it's a great honor to host you here. And I feel optimistic that as long as you are here, we will be in better position. Thank you very much.
much.